Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Debating Metal. I am your host, Kenneth Dean, the Dean of Metal, along with my co-host, Chris Kaye. Today, we welcome back Sklo to the show. Hello, Sklo.
Hello, thanks for having me, fellas.
2 out of 3 of us are really big Kiss fans, and one of us is getting there. And so we thought, with their career winding down in the next few weeks, we'd do a rundown of all their albums. And with so many albums to go through, we decided to split this episode into 2 parts. So we present to you Kiss, Worst to First.
Having released 24 studio albums, including their 1978 solo albums, 8 live albums, and various compilations, and a box set, Kiss are one of the best-selling American bands in the history of music. With 30 gold and platinum albums to their credit in the US alone, Kiss has been a staple of the hard rock and heavy metal scene for 50 years. On this episode, Kenneth, Sklo, and myself rank their albums from what we think is their worst all the way up to what we believe is their very best.
And once we're done with that, we'll give you our Big 4 Kiss members. So sit back, relax, turn it up to 11, and let the debate begin. Kiss, Worst to First. Sklo, Chris, this is going to be an interesting episode. We're ranking the 24 albums from Kiss.
It was a big undertaking. I had not heard all the albums in their entirety. I can say that for sure. Now I have. I've listened to every single Kiss album over the course of 2 weeks, and I found some stuff I really loved and some stuff that I did not love so much. So I think we'll be getting to that sooner, and then we'll end off with the best of the best. So what about you, Sklo?
Yeah, I've been a Kiss fan my whole life. Basically, since I was 6, 7, 8 years old, I've listened to them, and they were pretty much my first favorite band in quotes here. So I've listened to all these albums a lot. And it's been a while since I've listened to a lot of these albums, to be honest. And I honestly surprised myself on, I ranked albums probably higher than I initially thought I'd rank certain albums, and lower than I thought I would on some, which is interesting. So after re-listening to a lot of these, and maybe it's as I get older, things change with the way I hear things or whatever. But so yeah, it was a really big undertaking for me as well. I did the same thing. The last 2 weeks, I've really spent a lot of time, basically, I listened to all 24 albums in its entirety. So yeah, it was a lot of fun, actually, hearing songs again that I haven't heard in a while. So I had a lot of fun doing this.
It is quite the undertaking to listen to 24 albums. And I know, Chris, you don't have anybody in your house that's going to tell you, don't put this on, or, I don't know if you listen to it on headphones or if you're listening to it out loud. In my case, and I'm pretty sure Sklo has the same issue, it's not like you could just sit there and crank it up in the middle of the living room when, someone's trying to watch TV or something like that,
Yeah, my dog didn't complain at all. Like she was cool about it. So,
Sklo, how was your cat with all the Kiss?
She was fine. Honestly, it works out well.
She really enjoyed Peter Criss.
She did. She was meowing every time he was singing on his solo album. But no, for me, honestly, it works out well. I work from home, and a lot of the work I do, I listen to music throughout the day, so I can actually turn it up a little bit. It just, my wife works next to me in her office, so I have to keep, certain times when she has her work going on at meetings, I have to keep it down. But usually when she's not, I can turn it up a little bit. So it's not bad, actually. It works out well.
Was she listening to like the Ace Frehley solo albums in the next office over? Like
she was singing all the tunes. I could hear her singing everything.
Does she like that kind of music, or is she a little bit softer?
No, she does like that music, but she's not a big Kiss fan. But she does like a lot of, she goes to concerts. She was a big Korn fan, back when we first started dating. She still likes them too, and she likes the Deftones and listens to, obviously she likes Metallica and bands like that. And she's a big Ghost fan and Foo Fighters fan. So yeah, she's been into it. So she likes it, and she likes listening to it. So, but Kiss is not one that she's been, doesn't hate him or anything, but I think it's not her favorite.
Fair enough.
Which a lot of people are. It's either you love them or you hate them, honestly, with a lot of people.
Yeah, that's very true, especially nowadays.
Yes, 100%.
All right, so let's get this show on the road here, as we should say, or shall say. So Kiss, worst to first, we're going to rank them from 24 all the way to number 1. and then we're going to talk a little bit about each album as we go along, and we'll try not to step on each other's toes too much. All right, so Chris Kaye, why don't you go ahead and start it off?
All right. So when I was listening to all these, and as I was going through, I was finding, oh, okay, well, this one goes above the other. I like this. This has more songs that I enjoyed. The production maybe was a little bit better on this album, so it might push it ahead or something like that. But there was one album. There was one album that's just stood out to me that I just really disliked. And so it's also unfortunate that that's the longest album that they put out. They just kept putting songs on it, and why? My number 24 is "Hot in the Shade." That was their 19th album. Of that album, I only liked one song that I genuinely thought was a good song, and that was "Rise to It," the first track. Other than that, I enjoyed about 5 of the 15 tracks: King of Hearts, Little Caesar, Boomerang, and Read My Body. So a couple notes that I took as I'm listening to this, and one of the big things that just I hated about it was the production itself it's not bad, but what they did was they muddied everything up, and they pushed the drums so far back that they were like barely there. It's gross. You have the band trying to do a lot of things, like just kind of hang on to the career that they had, and it's really sad. Like I made a joke about King of Hearts is a Paul Stan Jovi song. I would say that "Read My Body" is like a poor man's "Pour Some Sugar on Me." It's just kind of a nothing album. It's just I think the biggest sin that it carries is that it's boring, and I was so bored that I started to hate it as I was listening to it. So above anything else, like I could find way more to enjoy on just anything else on their catalog, but this album for me just stood out as the absolute worst.
All righty then. Well, tell us how you really feel. All right. Well, Sklo, what's your number 24?
So for me, I don't know, being a Kiss fan, I like all of them, to be honest. But you got to put one at the bottom, and I mean, some are like not as good. And I did the same thing as you, Chris. As I would listen to an album, I'd put it. I listened to the first album, and of course, I put it first, and I listened to the next album, and I compared it to that one to see where it fall, and I kind of did that as I went through. I had an idea how I would certain albums I think would be higher than others going into it, but you still want to re-listen to everything and hear them all out. So for me, this actually was a surprise that I had it last after I got done ranking everything. I just said, you know what, I'm going to rank them all, boom, and I'm going to rank them. I'm not going to try to get me change my mind on anything. I listened to them. This is where I felt when I listened to them. So Peter Criss was my 24 album. This album, honestly, there's nothing on there that really stood out to me at all. The one positive that I love that I actually didn't know, which being a fan, I had no idea that Steve Lukather, the founding member of Toto, played solo on 2 of the songs. Not sure if you guys knew that or not. I'm sure you looked it up, or you maybe knew that already. I didn't know that.
I saw that he played on it, but I didn't check what songs.
Yeah, he played solos on that's the King of Sugar Papa Looks and Hooked on Rock and Roll. So that was a positive for me. I don't. If I had to rank them, that's where I put it. And it was something that when I was listening to it, I was like, okay. I was like, all right, it's okay. I mean, I don't see myself putting it on anytime soon.
I can totally understand that because it is such an outlier in their catalog. It doesn't feel like a Kiss album per se, and in that context, it definitely is like, if you don't like Rod Stewart kind of music, then you're not going to like that Peter Criss album. So I get that.
Yeah, you hit on the head there. I exactly. So that's where I'm at 24.
All right. Well, I agree with you, Sklo. My number 24 is Peter Criss too. And
interesting.
So I listened to it the other day, and quite honestly, I found no redeeming value in it. So, and that's saying something. In all honesty, though, one song I do like on that album, and I've liked it since I was a kid when I first heard it, is the song "I Can't Stop the Rain," last song on the album.
Mm-hmm.
So what's your favorite songs, both of you? What's your favorite song on the album? What do you think is the worst song on the album?
I Can't Stop the Rain is my favorite. The worst one for me, any of the above. That,
Yeah.
let me look at my tiny, tiny notes that I have here because this spreadsheet's so small. Um,
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think honestly, I agree with Dean there. I can't stop the rain, and honestly, the least favorite. Man, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I
I
really
mean,
don't.
I listened to it the other day. I mean, Don't You Let Me Down. There's nothing
Yeah,
about it. I mean,
tossing and
rock.
turning's not bad. I don't mind
Well, Tossing
tossing
and
and
Turning,
turning.
that's a cover song. So I'm like,
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's a cover, so it's like
So
But
I just thought, I mean, from what I understand, a lot of these songs were originals that were from pre-Kiss days that he brought over from his. I guess he was in band Chelsea or some shit
yes,
like that. So I don't know. I Can't Stop the Rain is probably the best one. Hooked on Rock and Roll is not bad. Tossing and Turning is a cover, so I mean, it was a good cover, or actually, it was a good original song. His cover is okay; it's adequate. So that's my number 24.
Okay.
What was your? You didn't. I don't think you said what your favorite song was, Chris. Or yeah, Chris.
For
Peter Chris. Oh,
Peter Chris, I
oh,
haven't gotten to that one
you
yet,
haven't gotten that.
so
That's right.
I'm
Right.
gonna hold on to that. But just so we stay in line, on Hot in the Shade, my favorite song was Rise to It, and then I thought the worst were Cadillac Dreams and You Love Me to Hate You. Uh, just pretty much despise those songs.
You
So
Love Me to Hate You. That's a Desmond Child song.
yeah.
It's him,
yes.
him and his twisted titles. So that's the cool thing. All right, so Chris, you're number 23.
All right, so my number 23, I actually did like this better than Hot in the Shade. Now I had some questions about it as I was listening to it because it was just such an odd direction for this band to go. And that was Carnival of Souls, the final sessions. So for me, I did like a couple songs on it. I liked I Will Be There and I Confess. I thought those were pretty decent. Um, but obviously this was a weird one because it almost never came out. It did finally release in 1997 before the reunion with Ace and Peter, and I mean part of that was it got leaked to the public, so they kind of were forced to put the album out. But
I had one
um,
of those leaks.
but just such a weird choice. I mean, I can absolutely see why it was shelved. The lyrics really do kind of come off as disingenuous because it's like you got 50-year-old guys that are singing about angsty things that like that Nirvana was singing, and 3-4 years later, really towards the end of the grunge movement. I don't understand what they were planning to do with their tour. Like if they were going to tour with this album, right? And then you sing some angsty song like I Confess, and then the next song is something poppy off of Hot in the Shade. Like, what the hell are they doing? You know, Paul's voice I think is just totally wrong for this genre, whereas like I think Gene's voice worked fairly well. And the riffs are just kind of there. Like, there's nothing that really blew me away. I would say my favorite song on there was I Confess, and the worst one was Rain. It was so like fake angsty. It is bad.
uh, I can't wait to get to that one.
All right.
All right, all right. Sklo, what's your number 23?
My number 23 is Unmasked,
Wow.
1980. Yeah, I have it low. I didn't like. I don't. After listening, it's been a while since I listened to it, but after listening to it recently, I don't know. I don't like the production that much. I'm not a big fan of Shandy. That it's a song that was pretty much a big song off that album. That's probably my least favorite song, honestly, on it. And I really like Talk to Me. I mean, Talk to Me. Ace Frehley sings on that one. But other than that, I mean, nothing else to really say. I just didn't love the production of the album. It came out right after Dynasty during those disco years, and just I don't know. I just not after listening to it, that's kind of where I had it, and I just didn't. Again, one cool thing I always like looking at like who else played on the albums and everything else, and that one had Bob Kulick, Bruce Kulick's brother was on that as an additional guitar player. They brought him in for that, so that was pretty cool to see that. And that's where Anton Fig played drums on it. They didn't really, Peter didn't even play on that album, and but he's on the cover, of course. Um, that's pretty much it. And I think that's a big part of it for me is like, I do like having the original members involved, and I know there's a lot going on there, and there's a lot of, between all those members, and Peter Criss he's not even on the record at all, and that's not why it's ranked there. But it's, for me personally, I just didn't think it was what I wanted and didn't love it.
Ah, I could see all your points.
I get that. I mean, Anton has a very different drum sound than Peter too. And you can like, if you thought that was Peter playing, I could totally understand. But knowing in hindsight, like, they sound very different.
Yeah, and it's not even because he's on the album. It's just, for me, it's just like, I mean, I think he played fine on the album. I don't even have an issue with that. It's more of just in general, the quality of the album for me, production. I just don't love it as much as the other, the other ones above it.
You're like Sklo. You're like 7, 8 years old when this album came out.
I was 5.
You were 5.
I was born in 75. It came out in 80.
Okay. So you're 5 years old. You don't know that it's not Peter Criss, right? I don't know. I mean, I'm 11 years old, and I was just excited that there was a new Kiss album. I had no idea. I mean, I saw Peter on the cover. They said Peter was on the on the credits. I'm like, all right, that's it. It's Peter Criss. But then later on, all of a sudden, I'm watching Kids Are People Too on ABC, and hey, look, we're introducing our new drummer, Eric Carr. I'm like, holy shit, what happened?
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
So that's those weird things when you're a kid. You don't realize. Yep. All right. So number 23 for me is the just one step above Peter Criss in redeeming value, Psycho Circus. I don't know how you guys are rating this higher than this one, but I listened to this album, and to me it is a clusterfuck of noise coming from every direction. You've got the band is completely separate in almost everything they're doing. Peter doesn't play on but one album, on 2 songs, 1 track in terms of drums. So someone else played the drums in the whole album. Ace Frehley's only singing on a couple of songs and playing guitar on a couple of songs. Basically, it's Tommy Thayer playing most of the lead guitar, and Bruce Kulick throwing in a few licks here and there. So it's like everybody from Kiss at this point, except for Vinnie Vincent, was involved in this project. And it sounds like the production's off, and Bruce Fairbairn, great producer. This album does not sound like a Bruce Fairbairn album whatsoever. So I was just turned off by it. Psycho Circus is a decent song. It's going to be my favorite song on the album, but maybe Into the Void, a close second. The worst song on this album for me, it's God. Just pick a Journey of 1,000 Years, Dreaming. There's just a lot of bad songs, and they tried to make it seem like they were cohesive, but no, they were just like, watered down glue, just spreading all over the place. It's just bullshit. So anyway, number 22, Acacia Avenue.
My number 22 is Gene Simmons. It's really dated, and not in a good way. I thought the album overall was pretty boring. I disliked more than I liked, honestly. Like, there was a lot of things, like putting in background singers, and I thought that was really overused. Even the songs that I did enjoy just went on too long. Like, it was almost like he didn't have any idea of like how to keep a song at a good length, which is weird because Gene, to me, is one of the better songwriters for Kiss in general. So I don't know what he was doing with this album. I'll give him credit for trying new things, for sure. Like, I would say Mr. Make Believe for sure is my favorite song that he did on the album. I enjoyed Radioactive, although the intro I thought was kind of lame. See You Tonight wasn't bad. Man of a Thousand Faces, See You in Your Dreams. Those were all pretty decent. I don't know why the hell he thought it was a good idea to put When You Wish Upon a Star on this thing. I mean, that's the biggest piece of shit.
I have an answer for that.
Okay, well, it was dumb. It was dumb.
Well, when you think about the reasons why he put it on there, then you kind of understand. Basically, if you listen to any Gene Simmons interview from over the years, the fact that he lives in America, the fact that he's able to make him something of himself,
Mhm.
his wish came true. And
Well,
so,
my wish did not come true when I heard this piece
so
of
that,
shit.
that was why he chose to put that on there, because it was one of those things. It was just a lifelong dream. He had made it. So it was one of those things that he was expressing himself in that terms. Did he do a good job? That's debatable. Uh, but it was on the album. I didn't understand why they covered "See You in Your Dreams," or he covered his own song.
Yeah, it's okay. Like it was a fine cover.
The Kiss
You know,
version.
for sure. 100%. But that I mean that's why it ended up so low on my list. I just thought it was way overproduced. Like they were trying too many things to make it sound bombastic and huge, and it just ended up being like just too much.
Yep. All right, Sklo, what's your number 22?
My number 22 is Monster, 2012, the second studio album with the current lineup they have. It's good, but nothing really stood out to me. The production's fine. I don't have an issue with the production or anything. None of the songs really stood out to me on the album at all. Like where I, go out and oh, this is great. I put this on my playlist right now. There's nothing, but I did think the production was pretty good in it. It came out really well. But there's nothing that really stood out. All four members are pretty much playing on every song, of course, and really didn't even bring anybody else in, to be honest. There was Brian Whelan played piano on Freak. Other than that, nobody else played anything on the album. So, but yeah, for me, that's pretty much it. Monster.
Oh, gotcha. Number 22 for me, I agree with Chris Kaye, Gene Simmons.
Yeah.
To expand on a little bit of Gene Simmons, I liked Radioactive. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't understand the whole trying to scare the shit out of you at the beginning. It just kind of
Yeah, it's
the song doesn't go with that intro whatsoever.
No, it does. It like that's why I said I liked 4.5 songs on the album because I hate the intro to that song. It's just
Yeah,
bleh.
Living in Sin's a cool song. Man of a Thousand Faces, cool song. I To me, there was no reason to do "See You in Your Dreams." I think it's a cool line, but the Kiss version was so much better on "Rock and Roll Over." "Burning Up with Fever" is okay. This was Gene Simmons trying to show off. He invited like 10,000 guests on this record,
Exactly. There's
and
there's
it's just like,
487 credits on this thing.
oh, I
Yeah,
know.
he did. There's a lot. There is
I mean,
100%.
it's just ridiculous how many people were on this album. But that was him trying to, invite his Hollywood friends, invite his musical friends and all that. And that's great. But it was one of those projects that just was kind of like, I'm surprised it's not like 50 songs,
Yeah.
because it's one of those like, yeah, come on in, do the song, and it's like, come on, just do what do who you are, and I think that's one thing he didn't do. But again, I think he also tried to go out of his way to do something different. So if that's what he was doing, he achieved that successfully, but it's not who Gene Simmons from Kiss was, and that's something that Paul Stanley and Ace Frehley were able to achieve. But we'll talk about that
Agreed.
when we get
Yeah.
when we get to those albums.
Yeah, that was one of the things that like when I thought of Gene Simmons at that point, and he's always kind of like the harder member of Kiss. Like when I listened to this, I was like, "What is this? Like this is not what I was expecting at all."
I mean, I remember as a kid listening to all this shit, and I was like, "Wow, this is pretty cool," But again, I'm growing up in the middle of the disco era, middle of
Yeah,
pop, Michael Jackson. So this kind of stuff fit in, but I was also 9 years old. So
true.
what did I know? All right, number 21.
All right, number 21 was your number 22, Sklo. I put Monster here. Um, I thought it was weaker than Sonic Boom. I thought Sonic Boom was a better, album for this lineup. Hell or Hallelujah, Long Way Down, and All for the Love of Rock and Roll. I thought were pretty decent songs. I would say pretty much everything else was lesser. I mean, Wall of Sound was okay. It's a little cheesy, but okay. Like not in a bad way cheesy. Shout, Mercy, Eat Your Heart Out, The Devil Is Me, Out of This World. I thought those were all okay. Everything else, especially like Freak. Oh, I hate Freak. Like that's one song that I was listening to and I was just like, okay, yeah, Kiss, y'all are totally freaks. You don't fit in anywhere. You know, I don't know. It just came off as disingenuous, and maybe that's how Paul Stanley feels. I don't know, but it's hard to relate to a billionaire playing song about not fitting in.
Yeah, but the thing is, you remember that to me is almost an autobiographical song for Paul because he has that ear defect. So I think that was pretty much him trying to talk about what he went through as a kid.
Sure. I just, for the most part, I thought it was pretty boring. I thought Long Way Down was definitely my favorite song on the album. Eric Singer has a really good voice. I was very surprised. I had never heard him before. But Freak and Back to the Stone Age, I thought were my least favorite on there.
Okay. Number 21 for you, Sklo.
21 for me is Crazy Nights.
Wow. Crazy Nights.
Yep. Yep, it is. And I mean, I do like songs on the album core. I mean, I really do like Crazy Nights, the first song. I remember when I was a kid, I remember that coming out. I was about 12 when that came out. I remember getting it and just hearing that song, and I did play it a lot. But the rest of the album, to me, honestly, just I don't know. It's good, but there's nothing that really stands out. I mean, I do really do like Hell or High Water. I do like that song a lot. That's something Bruce Kulick kind of bring to the table with a riff he had. And this is, I mean, I like all four of the members of the band at this point. They're all really good. I think this is the second album with that lineup of Simmons, Stanley, and Kulick and Carr overall. And I don't think I think this is one where they had a couple people come in, but nothing really, not like the Gene Simmons Soul album. They had a keyboardist and a backing vocalist come in for the album. But yeah, that's my 21.
Okay. Yeah, I'll talk a little bit more about Crazy Nights a little bit later. My number 21 is Carnival of Souls. I agree with you on the Chris about the angsty bullshit that they try to pull off. It doesn't work because first of all, yeah, you're rich, millionaires. You don't have anything to really complain about except maybe you're not getting along with each other because one guy's trying to be a Hollywood dude. And that was something that had happened in the 80s. They're already 7 to 10 years past that point. So they're trying to make an album. They're trying to be relevant. And this is something that's going to be a subject that we talk about throughout this whole episode. And we've mentioned it before. Kiss has tried to stay relevant. They were leaders in the 70s. And ever since they came out with Dynasty and Unmasked and The Elder, they were trying to play catch up and they never ever caught up. And that has been basically, in my opinion, the story of Kiss since the 80s. And it's unfortunate. They had a successful career. They did well, but it was always trying to play catch up. And it was always they were always one step behind, in my opinion. So with Carnival of Souls, I mean, I Will Be There. I think that's a really cool ballad. And my favorite song on the album is probably Hate, just because I can get into that mindset for Gene. And I really enjoy that song. But, Master and Slave is just kind of like, come on, it just drones on. Childhood End is pretty interesting. In terms
I didn't think that one was bad. Yeah, that one was okay.
And Rain is like in Jungle. It's just like, come on, man, you guys this is not you. But they wanted to sound like Alice in Chains, and so they went and they got the producer Toby Wright, and that's it. All you're getting is a producer to give you that sound, but you got to come up with the songs, and the songs just lacked in this.
And Paul can't pull off Alice in Chains at all. I'm sorry. Like he's a great singer. He's a great singer, but like that's not his voice. I did come up with a better title for the album though. Almost 50, Almost Angsty.
Nice. All right, number 20.
So my number 20 is Peter Criss. I don't dislike this album, but it's not a Kiss album by any means. I actually, for the most part, I would say I could enjoy it to some level. But when I was a kid, my mom used to listen to Rod Stewart all the time. So I've got that like, that childhood kind of nostalgia for that sound. You know, that was one thing I was noting through the whole time. It sound or felt more like a Rod Stewart album than anything. Very different in style to Kiss. I would say there's like way too many ballads. He should have done a little bit more kind of rock and roll and bluesy stuff because he's very good at it, and his voice is so strong when he sings a song like say Black Diamond or something like that. But like this was just too many ballads, and so it's very weird, and I can see why anyone would place it low. I mean, number 20 and a 24 is still pretty low. But I liked Hooked on Rock and Roll. I liked I Can't Stop the Rain. I think that's the kind of sugar Papa likes was my least favorite. And the production wasn't bad. Like everybody that worked on it was pretty good. The songs that he did drum on, like I always like Peter Criss's drum sound. I think it was Alan Schwartzberg, who did a few other things with Kiss over the years. Like was the drummer for a lot of the songs, and it sounds good. It's just not a Kiss album, and I can totally see why most people wouldn't like it.
Can't believe you have that higher than Gene Simmons.
It's way better than Gene Simmons.
That's debatable.
Clearly, yeah.
All right,
you guys clearly think it's worse than everything else. So
it's the worst. It's the worst Kiss album. All right, Sklo, what do you got for 20?
Gene Simmons is my 20. Yeah, I mean, you guys pretty much touched on it. The only thing I could touch on is all the people he had on. Joe Perry, Bob Seger, Rick Nielsen, Donna Summer, Cher. Just to name 5 quickly that were on the album with him.
The funny thing, he had Helen Reddy.
Helen Reddy.
I was like, what?
Yeah. I would have thought like this was the soundtrack to like the Gene Simmons Variety Hour or something.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, that's
basically what it was.
Yeah. So that's my 20. I mean, you guys already touched on a lot of it, so we can go to the next one.
All right.
Yeah.
My number 20 is Unmasked. Like I said earlier, it was an album that came out in 1980. It is, I'm 11 years old at the time this comes out, and I don't know any better. I mean, at the time, I dug the album. I thought it was really cool because that is what I knew. I didn't know any better per se. I knew that they had gone quote unquote disco, but this album was a lot better in terms of disco. It just had that disco slick sound to it, but the songs were better. Is That You's a killer song. I wish the production would be more raw, and I think those songs would sound so much better. But that's, obviously that's debatable to a lot of people, but to me, if you put a raw sound on Is That You, or if you put a raw sound, and Ace Frehley loves to do raw sounds, but Talk to Me or any of the Ace Frehley songs, those would be really, really good, better than what they are. I mean, the best songs in this album to me is That You and the Ace Frehley songs. Two Sides of the Coin, Torpedo Girl. That's probably the weakest of the Ace Frehley songs. And Talk to Me. Talk to Me's just got a cool hook to it. To me, the worst song on it, probably You're All That I Want, or What Makes the World Go Round. But yeah, this was an album that it's just weak in a lot of ways. It was huge in Australia. Australia is just weird, and so and no offense to our new dear friend that Sklo and I played baseball with from Australia, Scott, but it's just Australia is weird, man. That's just it. So
yep.
All right, number 19.
All right, this is gonna piss a lot of people off. My number 19, Destroyer.
Wow.
I don't like Destroyer. I like a couple songs on it. I think it's way, way, way overproduced. I would say, for me, Detroit Rock City, absolute classic song. Sweet Pain, it's a really good track as well. But songs like Great Expectations and Rock and Roll Party, I mean, Rock and Roll Party's a nothing. It's like, it's just thrown in garbage at the end, right? But like, Do You Love Me? Not a big fan. Great Expectations, like I said, and Flaming Youth. I just couldn't get into them. I mean, Beth is a classic song. Not a big fan of it though. I think God of Thunder is pretty cool. King of the Nighttime World, I can take it or leave it. I know people love that song, but I don't know. I think Shout It Out Loud is all, or Shout It Out Loud is, it's just passable for me. I listen to this and I just want to understand why people like are so blown away by it, because for me it was just pretty mediocre, and especially compared to some of the other stuff that we're going to talk about later. I just thought it was like a lot of gimmicky transitions between the songs, and then just I didn't like as much as I didn't like, right? So I had to put it pretty low.
You're a heretic.
Sure.
I don't agree. So we're gonna talk.
Yeah,
about
I'm not gonna talk about it yet. I'm just letting him say his piece, and we'll get to it later.
We'll bash him later. Okay.
No, hey, we all
right.
have our rankings, man. I don't
No,
have any problem with that.
Number 19 for you, Sklo.
Number 19 for me is Revenge. Yeah. It was a weird time for
that both of these just pissed off Dean.
Yeah,
that's wild.
It was a weird time for the band at the time. I'm not saying that it affected the album, but Eric Carr, was sick and ended up passing away pretty much right before this. And they so obviously this is the first album with Eric Singer on it, and the one thing I love about the album though is I love that they included the last song, the Car Jam, 1981, of Eric Carr playing like an instrumental. And he has backing vocals on God Gave Rock and Roll to You too, as well. I mean, again, I'm a Kiss fan in general, so all the albums to me I can probably listen to and I'll be fine. And this is one of those ones. I mean, I could listen to it. The length of it's not super. It's like 48, 49 minutes long. And certain songs that stick out to me. I do like the Car Jam. I do like Domino. God Give Rock and Roll to You. Obviously, that's a song from the movie. Bill and Ted, I think.
Yeah, Bill and
Bill and Ted.
Yeah,
the second one, Bogus Journey. Yeah, I mean it's okay, and so I mean it's a good album. It's good. But I have it down because I just revere some of the albums better. To be honest, overall for me, I think the production's fine. I don't have an issue with that. On this one, they had a couple people who played on it, and Tommy Thayer, before he was officially in the band, was on the album as some backing vocals on it. And they brought in Kevin Valentine on drums to take it off, who he's also drummed on some other things of theirs in the past as well. So
you have this album higher than Hot in the Shade. Okay.
Hey, I'm not going to give you any hints where Hat in the Shade is, so you'll see.
Jesus.
Hey, you haven't mentioned it yet, Dean.
What, Hot in the Shade?
No, you haven't.
No, that's because it's coming up right now. Number 19.
Okay, there you go. There you go.
Hot in the Shade. For the longest time, and it's because the 70s Kiss, held a certain place in my heart. For the longest time, I thought Hot in the Shade was, other than a couple of songs, was the biggest pile of shit that they had put out. I mean, I agree with Chris. It was way too long, 15 songs. I mean, that was part of the whole era of CDs. It's like, oh, we could do CDs, they could be over an hour long. They could be 75 minutes long. We got to put in 15, 20 songs. No, you don't. Put fucking 10 good songs and that's it. Go away.
I can tell you if this album was 10 songs and like the 10 best songs that they had, I wouldn't have hated it as much as I did, because it just kept going. Like, just stop.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. All of side 2 was just like, why is this even playing?
Yeah.
I mean,
Little Caesar was cool. Like, hearing Eric Carr sing, I think is great. He has a great voice.
I mean, he was so appreciative of the band letting him do that song, and he was so psyched that he actually finally got a song on a Kiss album. But I think there could have been better songs. Yeah, way too little, way too late. For me, my favorite song, I kind of have to agree with you. Rise to It. Love the intro, the little acoustic guitar stuff. My other favorite songs on the album are Hide Your Heart and Forever. At the Forever, one of the best ballads that Kiss have put out, in my opinion. Really, really love that song. And unfortunately, I used it on my first wife, and now I can't use it anymore.
I've got a song like that too. So
and it's like I listened to it. I'm like, damn it! Did I have to really give this one to her? Shit, I could have used this for somebody else. Anyway, Hide Your Heart. I mean, everyone knows a little bit about Hide Your Heart, and the fact that at the time that this album came out, it was released as a single at the same exact time Ace Frehley released his version. After he was told that Kiss wouldn't put it out because Holly Knight said, "Oh yeah, Gene's not, Paul's not going to do it. The band's not going to do it." And then, they changed their mind. Fucking A. So Ace Frehley's version, a lot more raw, a lot less produced. Sometimes I think it's better version. Then I listen to the production on the Hot in the Shade version from Kiss, and it's a little bit slicker. I think Paul tells the story a little bit better, but I like the sound of Ace Frehley's version. But that's my number 19, Hot in the Shade. All right, 18.
all right, so 18. Man, I went with Hotter Than Hell. Hotter Than Hell. What?
Who are you?
I don't like your comments, Dean. We have our rankings. You have yours. Let us do what we got to do here. All right.
I have a feeling that you picked Hotter Than Hell as well. All right, so okay.
I didn't put it that low, but I just don't like Dean always commenting. Oh, really? You have Hot in the Shade there? You have it here? You have it higher than that?
It's gonna happen. Some of these choices are gonna piss people off. So
I'm gonna pick on you, Sklo. I'm gonna pick on you, Sklo.
Here's the thing: the songs on Hotter Than Hell are pretty good. It's just the production that really drags it down, and I think it's different than a lot of people think, because I really listened to this and I listened to it with headphones on where I could hear like every aspect of the music too, and it's a strange production because a lot of it sounds like it was intended to sound lo-fi in certain places where even if it wasn't, like maybe they recorded this on this equipment and then a different part on different equipment, because like even within the same song, you'll hear different like levels of quality in the mix, which is very weird. But I would say like there's some really good songs on there. I liked, 7 out of 10 of them. Parasite and Going Blind to me were my favorites. And the songs sound way better on Alive. Just way better. So if they had the production quality of what they did on Alive, I would put it higher. But I think overall it's still a really good album. It just ranks lower than the other stuff, because we're kind of getting into where these albums that we're going to talk about from here on out, I actually really like pretty much all of them. It's just the ones at the very bottom where I was like, not so much. But like from here on out, I think like everything above here is great. It's just the production on this one just puts it way lower than everything else.
Fair enough. I can agree with the production. It's just terrible production. Well, I'll have more to talk about it later. It's not that far up my list, but it wasn't this far down either. All right, Sklo, what do you got for 18?
Are you gonna make a comment when I say what it is?
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's all I want to know. I have Asylum 18. So that's the first album with Bruce Kulick as an official member. He replaced Mark St. John right before that on the tour, and then this is his first album. I was, again, it was one of the things when this came out, I was 10. Asylum, yeah. And I remember it coming out and hearing Tears Are Falling, which I love that song. I played it all the time. But as I got older, hearing the album and everything else, the songs don't really stick out as much to me. Lengthwise, the album's fine. It's got 10 songs. But Tears Are Falling is really, to be honest, the only song I really would probably go back to. I don't mind. I didn't take notes on this one, to be honest. I think it was Trial by Fire with Gene Simmons singing on that one. I didn't mind as well. But yeah, I could listen to it, but it's not one that I'm going to, put in all the time. listen to. But yeah, that's it. Asylum 18.
I mean, I can see your point. I don't sit there and put this album in super high regard. So I can see your point if especially when you grew up with it as a 10-year-old, really.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah,
I could see where that comes from. But there were some better points of the album. And it goes up a little bit for me, so we'll talk about that a little bit later.
sure.
Number 18 for me was Monster. Um, as you mentioned earlier, there's not a lot of good stuff on this album, but it's all relatively consistent. So there are some good hooks, but there's nothing that stands out. I mean, Heller Hallelujah is a really good song. Um, Stands out way above the rest of the album.
Mm-hmm.
But a song like Freak, I mean, I listen to it and I'm like, okay, so I understand the whole idea behind it. um Back to the Stone Age, cheesy to me. The one thing I discovered by listening to this is that Gene Simmons has literally a one-track mind. and 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 that's all he thinks about is
Mm-hmm.
sex, 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 and sex. And it's just like, it's amazing that other topics like God of Thunder and Unholy were actually written by him, because it's like, dude, get out of that fucking mind track. But there's nothing you can do. That's his whole style. And it's it's played out to the point where it's like everything he says is cliche. It's not even original sounding anymore. So that was part of my problem with Gene's songwriting. And Paul's not that far behind either. He's very similar minded, but he's expanded, in certain areas. But the album to me was just kind of like, it's like it's got hooks, but nothing stands out. So I'm like, yeah, I'll leave it be. All right, number 17.
My number 17 is Sonic Boom. I think it's definitely better than Monster. There's some good stuff to really enjoy here. Like, I would say Modern Day Delilah, All for the Glory, and Stand were the ones that really stood out to me. Stand stood out to me, I guess. um, and for me, like, Danger Us was just dumb. Like, danger me, danger you, danger us. Like, ugh. That's bad. There's some childish lyrics on this album. I would say, just like really goofy stuff. I like Eric Singer, great singer. Wow, I'm just throwing out the puns here, but I would like to hear more of him on these Kiss albums. I wish they would have allowed him to sing a bit more. I don't think Tommy Thayer's as strong. I feel like they use a little bit of what do you call it? The auto tuning a little bit on him. That may not be the case, but the way it sounds definitely sounds that way. But he still is pretty entertaining to listen to, and I would like a little bit more variety, like those old Kiss albums where you had the mix of all four singers, one song each. I get it, Gene, Paul, you have giant egos. You need 10 out of 11 songs to sing on, but let the other guys sing a little bit more.
Oh, I agree with you. I wish they would have done more songs. Touching back real quick on Monster, the Out of This World song that Tommy Thayer sings, it's
That's an Ace song. I'm sorry.
Exactly. So that was written as if he was playing the spaceman, and I'm like, dude, really?
It's like,
It's like,
off.
exactly. I was like, come on, man, that's not your gig. That's not your gig. Anyway, Sonic Boom, that's your number 17. I it's almost there for me, so we'll talk about it when I get to it. What do you got, Sklo?
My 17 is Dynasty.
Okay.
A lot of, during this time, there was a lot of tension in the band. Peter Criss wasn't really even involved on the album. He played on one song on Dirty Living. There's a lot going on. It was literally his last time he played on an album until he played on two songs on Psycho Circus, I think. So yeah, so that's my song, and the song, I know it was a huge song. I was made for loving you, but I mean, it's okay. It's okay in my eyes. It's okay. It's not. I know it's a tour. I know it's a song staple on their tour, and I don't mind seeing it live or anything like that. But it's okay. I'm not the biggest fan of it. So, but over on that, I think production wise, it's all right. It's not anything special or anything great. And they, of course, on this one as well, they had, Enton Fig played on this album on drums. None of the songs really stand out to me. Honestly, a lot of the songs stand out to me are the Ace songs. I mean, he does a cover of a Rolling Stones song, 2000 Man, which I do like. It's a cover song now. And I actually don't mind Dirty Living. I actually think it's one of my favorite songs on the album, to be honest. I like when Peter sings a lot. I like his voice.
Peter has a great voice.
Yeah, whenever he sings, like it really changes the game for me a little bit. And that's why going back to the Peter Criss album, it's upsetting because that album is so full of ballads, and I think it could be a lot better because he's got a great voice. But whatever. But anyway, that's my 17 Dynasty.
Hey, I mean, I can see your points on it, but at the same time, I disagree.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's again not too far away.
Yeah, I mean, you guys listed albums that I haven't even. You're not. I mean, I ranked pretty high, and there's I'm sure there's some. That's why I like comparing. But I like comparing so far because I'm actually comparing the three of us, and we do have some very similar, and we have 3 or 4 that are just totally out of the ballpark between all of us, which is pretty cool, actually.
So of the ones that we've talked about so far, the ones that we all have towards the bottom are Monster, Peter Criss, and Gene Simmons.
Yeah,
just those 3. So we're kind of in agreement that they're towards the bottom.
Well, I mean, that's good. That was good. Yeah, and a couple of us matched on a couple of them, so that was good.
So. Yeah. I'm surprised. My number 17. I'm surprised that you guys haven't mentioned this album yet. And so I'm very, very curious to see where this album sits in your top 24. Number 17 for me is Music from the Elder.
Yep.
Okay. So I'll put it to you this way: staunch defender of Kiss and Music from the Elder. I have been that way since the album came out. I told people, "No, it's a good album. It's a good album. It's got good songs. If you take yourself out of the equation and then you take Kiss out of the equation, so you just listen to this as a band, you're not necessarily a Kiss fan. You're listening to this as an album that just happens to be out there in the ether. This album is not bad. Now, when you throw in the other factors, then it's like, whoa, this is not a Kiss album. Okay, totally understand that. But when you sit there and say, okay, is this song good? Yes, it's good. Is this song a good Kiss song? Maybe not. So that's where, for me, I defended the shit out of this album when it came out. Oh, Kiss turned disco. Yeah, okay, whatever. I Was Made for Loving You. But they weren't listening to 2000 Man. They weren't listening to Charisma or Hard Times with Ace Frehley. They weren't listening to those songs. They were listening to I Was Made for Loving You. That's the only song that was disco.
Okay. Yeah, I would say Unmasked is more disco than
and even then it's just poppier. It really wasn't disco. Yeah. And the slick production.
Just saying it's more disco,
right?
Than
the slick production is what gives it more of that. It could fall into the disco category, but in reality, it's not. It's a rock album that's way overproduced. The Elder, coming, they get Bob Ezrin back. He's coming off of the success of The Wall from Pink Floyd. He even used some drum loops from The Wall. You can hear the drums in some of the songs sound very similar to the drums on Pink Floyd The Wall. And it's like he was trying to make another version of, another rock opera type album, with the band. And I don't know who sold them on that bill of goods. It was a fucking terrible idea. Eric Carr thought it was a terrible idea. Ace Frehley thought it was a terrible idea. But they got overridden because neither one of them had voting rights. Well, I mean, Ace had voting rights, but it was 2-1 at that point. So it's a good album. Got some nice highlights. I and the Oath, but the lowlights really dragged the album down. And that's part of the issue. And Gene Simmons cries in the video for A World Without Heroes. So, all right, number 16.
Number 16 for me is Crazy Nights. For the most part, I like this album. I'm not as big on Crazy Nights or Crazy Nights, the song, as you were, Sklo. It's fine. I don't mind it, but for me, it was No No No, Reason to Live and Good Girl Gone Bad. I like those. So there's a lot of Van Halen-esque kind of things on here. Like you mentioned earlier, Kenneth, like Kiss reached a point in their career where they're trying to catch on to trends. It's kind of funny that in 1987 are trying to do what Van Halen was doing in the late 70s. But I would say like overall it's not bad. There's some corny lyrics. I think the drums are pushed way too far back again. Because I mean you've got one of the best drummers they've ever had by far, and they keep pushing him back. Like they found a sound that really worked earlier on a couple albums, but then I don't know. It's just like they thought, oh, if we put the drums too far forward, then no one will pay attention to us. Gene and Paul. But I would say everything feels a little softer than like Asylum, which is kind of a bummer. I honestly feel like Gene's songs on this album like save the album. I know a lot of people say like Gene was checked out at this time, but he has the best songs on the album. It's crazy to me because it's like Paul's just trying so hard to find whatever trend is working, and it's like maybe the nonchalantness of Gene like just not caring work. I don't know. And then I laugh because you have these music videos and like you have which one is it? Is it Crazy Nights? You have like music videos that are focused on Gene during guitar solos. Like I don't get it. Like these guys have such massive freaking egos. Uh,
Oh yeah.
But like I said, I think the good outweighs the bad with this one. And it's still a really good album, and I love Eric Carr, so it's hard for me to rate anything with Eric like super low, but this is kind of like right in the middle for me.
Yeah.
Sklo, what's yours? Because I got something to say about this in a second.
Oh, why don't you just say it then about Crazy Nights?
Yeah, because
You go ahead if you want.
all right, Crazy Nights is my number 16 as well. So since we're on the topic,
Okay.
I agree with you in many things. This is way, way, way overproduced. It's very slick. This is the Kiss version of a Heart album, especially with Reason to Live.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean,
That's a good call.
the intro sounds exactly like a Heart song, especially from this time period. And again, that is Kiss trying to be relevant and trying to catch up. But the problem is at this point of the 80s, you're talking came out in 87. Yeah, we're beginning the last portion of the 80s, but in 87 things were they were getting away from that super slick sound. They were starting to get a little bit more raw. It wasn't there yet, but it was starting to. And Kiss again was just taking a step behind and oh, let's put out a really super slick album, because Asylum, 2 years before this, wasn't as slickly produced. It was well produced.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden you got and the problem was, the reason why it took 2 years was because they were waiting for this producer, Ron Nevison. They were waiting for him. I think he was coming off of doing Ozzy's album, The Ultimate Sin, and they were waiting for that to happen, and they can get him. And that album, from Ozzy, is also ultra slickly produced. So it's a Ron Nevison thing. They were expecting to get, big radio hit, which they did with Reason to Live. Crazy Nights is the more outstanding song on this album.
Yeah.
But, I don't know if either one of you guys know this. So Chris Jericho, the wrestler, he has a side band called Quarantine that has some of the guys from Trickster in it. And their first single that they released during the pandemic was the song No, No, No. And so when you listen to his version, you don't hear the Kiss production of it. It's not a bad song. A lot of guitar. I mean, a lot of guitar licks and ripping, shredding solos, and then you hear Chris trying to sing the high that Gene sings on this, and it's pretty interesting. And they've done a couple of other songs that came off of this album, and that's the interesting part. Jericho, being a really huge 80s Kiss fan, he likes this album. So I don't agree that it's a high ranking album. Number 16 for me. It's got a couple of songs that just really don't need to be on here. But Crazy Nights, obviously it's a standout. So Sklo, what's your number 16?
It's music from The Elder. So we were pretty much right there on that one. It's funny because honestly, when I started this process, I think I told you before we even started, is like, joking around, like Elder is going to be at the bottom for me. And then just because it's always revered as the worst album, but as I'm listening to it, I'm like, man, I've heard it in a long time. And I was like, man, I'm actually digging this. I'm like, it's got this Rush vibe to it. And I'm, a big Rush guy. And it's got that progressive, it's obviously a concept album. Like Rush, it's almost like remind me of 2112, but not 2112, but it has that vibe to it. I don't know. I was digging it. I was like, man, this is pretty good. And it's actually an album I think I would throw on again. You know what I mean? And listen to it a little bit again. And it's I love Eric Carr like you, Chris, and I'm a big it's his first album with the band, and it's actually Ace's last album until he plays on Psycho Circus. But yeah, and so yeah, I mean, you mentioned a couple of standout songs. I thought the same thing, Dean, on some of the songs you mentioned, and on the track listing there. And I actually also like Odyssey. I can name a few of them, Mr. Blackwell as well. But I just think I actually like it. It's a good album. It's not bad at all. And I think you're right. I think you made a good point that if it was another band's album compared to what Kiss was at the time and what they were doing, I think people thought it was like a drop in the level of what they were used to producing and getting out in the world. But if it was just like another band that made it, I think people would be like, "Oh, okay."
Absolutely.
Like a progressive rock band made that album. I think people would be like, "Oh, this is awesome."
Yeah, if Kiss doesn't put their name on it, no one knows it's a bad album, or no one thinks it's a bad album.
Yeah.
No one knows it's a bad album.
I stand corrected.
This is a good album, and then it's Kiss. Oh, it's a bad album.
That's exactly what it is.
I know. It's just funny. It's just a funny way to put it.
Yeah, it is. So that's my 16.
All right, so we're up to number 15.
So number 15 for me is Psycho Circus. You mentioned it earlier. I like it a bit more than you do, clearly. I think some of the good songs on there are the title track Psycho Circus. For me, I really like Into the Void. That's the Ace Frehley song on the album. I thought Dreamin' was okay, and In Your Face, which was the bonus track, that was also Ace Frehley. I like that one quite a bit. It's kind of a bummer that they left it off of the main album. But if you got the iTunes version back in the day, which I think probably a lot of people did, you got the In Your Face track. So this album did save their career. You can't take that away from them. It's not necessarily because of the album, but because of the tour that was associated with it. But it also made them a lot of money. Into the Void, I think, shows that that classic Kiss sound still works. This was the track that everybody played on, and it's good. I thought tracks like I Pledge Allegiance to the State of Rock and Roll were, fine. Like goofy, but fine. Journey of a Thousand Years was it's okay. For me though, like I finally found my way. That was the Peter Criss sung track. Is one of his worst. We Are One. It's just a hypocrisy bullshit song. And I just wish there were more Ace and Peter. I've heard the stories. I've heard why they didn't appear on it. I've heard the conflicting stories from so many different people. And I think it just comes down to that Paul and Gene, knew that this was their band. Ace and Peter weren't really getting back into it. They were using them to, get the image across, get the makeup back on, all that stuff. And when time came, move on from them because they had been doing their thing without them for years at this point. I mean, they've Kiss has been Paul and Gene more than was ever Paul, Gene, Ace, and Peter. So, I mean, as far as longevity, as far as like quality of music, that's a different story. So, I didn't think Psycho Circus was terrible, but it's it's number 15, so it's not great.
Not great. Okay. Okay, Sklo, what do you got for 15?
I have Sonic Boom for 15. It's kind of the same what you said, Chris. I did like Modern Day Delilah. I actually really like the singer song All for the Glory. That might have been my favorite song on the album.
Yeah,
Um,
that one's pretty good.
yeah, like it just I don't know, it flows really well. It's got a really good I don't know, just there's one song I was like, when it came on, I was like, man, this is really good. And I haven't heard that for a while. Say Yeah, it's a pretty good song as well. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's like you said, it's our 15th rank, so it's good. A couple good songs on there, and and it was actually the first for both of Thayer and Eric to actually have like a lead song on an album for them, and for me, that's a pretty good first lead for a singer. And actually, I thought Thayer's is pretty good. When Lightning Strikes as well. Didn't mind that one. Didn't mind it, but I definitely like the singer. That's probably my favorite track on the album.
So that's also my number 15, Sonic Boom.
Okay.
And so the way I look at it is this is the best of their worst albums, and this is the worst of their best albums. This is the cutoff line for me because all the albums from here on in to me are pretty good albums. You have to rank them at some point, just like you got to rank all 24. But there was a bunch at the bottom on this to me that kind of like, yeah, they were pretty lame. But this Sonic Boom, I actually thought when it came out was a really good album. I like Never Enough. I like Stand. Those are got some really good hooks. Modern Day Delilah, I think, is a really cool song. Um, just listening to it again this past week, I agree with you. All for the Glory, that singer song is a really, really good song. I mean, they have hooks, and it's never been a question for them in terms of writing hooks. It's just a question of, is the hook catchy enough to be a hit? And that's always been their issue, So this one, I mean, Never Enough. The problem with Never Enough, I think it's Never Enough. Yeah, the problem with Never Enough is it sounds like a Poison song, and it sounds like a Poison song off of Open Up and Say Ah, and I can't remember the name of the song right now, and I'll think of it in a second. But it is one of these things where it's like, okay, you're again trying to be relevant, but you're going backwards in time, and you're using something that is several years old, and it's kind of like, all right, come on, do something, where you just stand out on your own, and that is where Kiss tends to fail miserably all the time. It's honestly true. I mean, you think about, Carnival of Souls, they tried to be grunge, okay, but they started doing it in 1995 when the grunge was starting to die, and that is the problem. It's been that problem for a while, and so it's Kiss bashing, but it's at the same time I love the band. I just wish that they would have been smarter, I guess. I think, Chris, you and I were talking about this the other day. It's amazing that Kiss has gotten this far or got to this point because they stepped in it so many times and screwed up so many times. I haven't seen a band screw up this many times and still continue to be able to go out there and tour the way they have.
Sure, surely, yeah. I mean, I without that reunion tour, they're not around.
All right, exactly. I don't know if so. I was talking about that Poison song. I don't know if it's Nothing But a Good Time or if it's Look What You Can't Touch. I can't remember.
I'll
But
tell you, there was a lot of times I'm listening to songs in here, and like it'd be like one track here and there where I'm singing some other song's lyrics along with whatever they're playing because it sounded so similar to whatever that might be.
Yeah, it's Nothing But a Good Time. There's a ton of similarities between that song and between Never Enough. And it is what it is. I mean, Never Enough is a good song by itself. It's just wish it didn't sound so much like that Poison song.
Yeah.
So all right, so that's number 15 for me. What do we got? Number 14.
Number 14 for me is Revenge. I almost said Vengeance. Okay, like that's an album. Okay. Revenge. So Revenge has a lot of good things going for it. I like how heavy it is. I think it's definitely one of the heaviest albums. I love Unholy. I think that's a great track. God Gave Rock and Roll to You Too is very nostalgic for me because I was a huge fan of Bill and Ted when I was a kid. Domino, I thought was really cool. Some of the other songs I liked just fine. Um, and then Car Jam 1981 is, great tribute to Eric Carr. Um, but for the most part, I liked other albums better. And as much as I wanted to like this because it was heavier in sound, um, you know, it just didn't do it as much for me. I thought the album definitely didn't need a ballad. Like every time I look at you, I thought it was completely unnecessary. Gene is just an absolute top form here. Like this is Gene, kind of back on track. And I just felt like Paul was also trying still too hard to kind of follow the trends. But overall, really good album. Enjoyed it a lot.
You know, I hold this in a little bit higher regard. So we're going to talk a little more about it later. I got to say one thing though, Car Jam. When no one has mentioned the fact that that's actually a riff from Ace Frehley's Breakout, from his Frehley's Comet solo album.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So,
Right.
and it's interesting because, of course, they give him zero credit on this.
Of course.
But
That would damage their ego.
Of course.
So
Of
anyhow,
course.
What do you have for number 14, Sklo?
I have Psycho Circus.
Finally.
Very, very close to Chris. Chris and I are pretty close. You were way down on that one. Yeah, honestly, very similar reasons. I actually like the first song, the title track, a lot actually. And I do like Into the Void as well. I think you mentioned that, Chris, too.
Yeah, I think
I think
The Void is great. Like it
I do
it
too.
is.
I think it's
a good
really
song.
good. It's a really good song. And same as you, like I think this was obviously something that they made after the reunion tour, and they talked about, but they realized after the reunion tour they couldn't still get along. So Ace and
I
Peter
think
wrote
they knew that
on
before the reunion tour. I
yeah.
really do. Like looking back at the videos and you watch like the attitudes and the way they were interacting with each other. Like I think they knew from day one, like this isn't going to work, but we're going to make it work for our pocketbooks.
But I remember going. I mean, I went to that reunion tour, and I was super excited that they, because I think up until that point, the last album they had was Revenge in '92, with obviously the other lineup, and I think they realized to make some more money and do what they got to do, they had to have that reunion, even though they knew probably they weren't all going to get along. But I mean, I watched that concert in Philadelphia, and man, I was just like, it took me back when I was, at that point I was 21 when that came, but it just brought me back to when I was like 7, 8 years old and like wanting to be them, putting the makeup on. And it was just so cool and awesome. And then I was so excited that they were going to make an album together. And then of course you hear all the stuff that's going on. You don't really, when the album comes out, you don't have all that information at the time. So you're thinking all these guys are on every track. So yeah, it's a cluster in a way, but I actually think the album is actually not bad. I think it's not a bad one. It's something, but again, like you said, Chris, there's other ones I like better. I know Dean likes a lot better than that one, but it is what it is. So that's my 14.
Look,
14.
Psycho Circus, good song. Into the Void, good song. Everything else after that, I mean, it's just like it could be anything. You can pick another 8 songs, and I don't think anything is really that good or worth a shit for the rest of the songs. That's my opinion. Whether everyone agrees or disagrees, like I said, Psycho Circus, and it's funny because even Psycho Circus is so, to me, it comes across better live, much better live. That it was like I'm listening to it, I'm like, this doesn't do anything for me. Live is completely different. I mean, obviously they're playing the same song, but there's a different vibe to it. And there's this whole, because they usually use it at the beginning. And then I know they've been throwing it in the middle of their set, which to me is not a middle of the set kind of song. Although it's not an opener. So it's kind of a weird thing. but they were using it as an opener for a long time, and it just has a much different vibe. So I get it that you guys are ranking a little bit higher, but for me, I just everything else after those two songs is just kind of like, why? I don't. Peter Criss, has been checked out for years at this point. To me, though you wanted the best of four of them forced their way into the vocals. I mean, I'm pretty sure they weren't even in the same room at the same time doing anything.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's just like you could tell it's not cohesive, and that's what bothered me about it. But hey, we all have our things. Some like them better, some like them worse.
Some like them hot.
Yeah. All right, number 13.
My number 13 was Unmasked. I clearly like this album better than you guys. I thought Naked City was really cool. Tomorrow, Two Sides of the Coin, and Torpedo Girl. I definitely think Ace carried this album. Like, Ace's contribution to this album were pretty much the best stuff that's here. Unmasked, I don't think it's a bad album. I think it gets a bad rap. Like, there are some disco elements, there are a lot of poppy elements, and I can tell, like, you have a rock band that's starting to become more poppy. I totally understand why people wouldn't enjoy that, and I think there is like some blinders on that nostalgia factor, which is totally valid and taken into account. Like, nostalgia is a big thing, and it will hit you differently than anything else. But I think there was a lot of styles from the solo albums that kind of rubbed off here, and it worked pretty well. There was a lack of cohesion from the band, kind of like filled with this writing from an outsider. Like, you have Vinny Poncia writing on a lot of the stuff. Bob Kulick was a contributor. Anton Fig, obviously playing drums because Peter wasn't there. So there's good sides and bad sides to it. Like, but from somebody who didn't grow up listening to this, I thought it was a pretty decent album. To me, the worst song was Shandy. I mean, I'm in agree with you, Sklo. Like, I didn't care for that at all. But Two Sides of the Coin, I thought kicked ass. Like, really good song.
Yeah.
No, I like two sides. I mean, I agree with you. Ace really carried this album, and Torpedo Girl being the weaker of the three songs that he put on this album. But
It was still a good song.
Oh, still better than, You're All That I Want. And it's just the funny thing, man battleships, or what does he say? Man battleships, torpedo or some shit like that at the beginning.
Yeah.
The whole submarine thing. It's pretty cool and cheesy at the same time. But Talk to Me, killer song. I love that song. Is That You? I like that song. Again, if the production is a little raw or just normal as opposed to being super slick, I think that song really stands out. All right, what do you got, Sklo, for 13?
Hey, real quick, what was your 14, Dean?
14 for me was. Oh, did I even do 14?
I don't think you did. You were talking about Psycho Circus forever, and I was like, I think you skipped 14.
What? I think you skipped it because you went off on a tirade about Psycho Circus, and then you're like, "What's your 13, Chris?"
Let's cut it down, Dean. Let's go. Come on. Man.
All right. So
you can't remember your picks.
I know. 14 for me is Dynasty.
Okay.
So, going over Dynasty real quick. I mean, I think you both have touched it, or no?
I did not.
I have not.
Chris has not yet.
So
okay.
Dynasty for me, I was again right up there with the elders, staunch defender of Kiss. Sitting on the stoop of my house in New York, I was in New York City, in Yonkers, which is a suburb of New York, just north of the Bronx. It was one of these things where I had to, I'm listening to my little tiny radio, and I'm listening to "I Was Made for Loving You," and everyone's like, "It's disco," whatever. All these little rock heads that would walk by. And I agree, it is disco song, but it's a cool song. Now, is it cool now when Paul can't sing the high notes? Not as cool. It's in live. To me, that song never came across well live, but they still play it and they still get a reaction out of it. But that to me is a song that never came across live. But 2000 Man, love that song. I know it's a Rolling Stones cover, but that song, Ace likes it so much that when they did the reunion, they did the Unmasked 2000 Man was a song that he chose. He didn't pick any of his other songs. He picked that one. Um, I'm not a big fan of Dirty Living. I know, Chris, you liked it. I've never been a big Peter fan. I mean, his voice is cool, but I just never thought that his songs fit Kiss in that way. That was just always been my opinion. Charisma was a big song that I really liked. The Ace songs on this album, all Save Your Love, Hard Times, those songs kick ass. So I think in agreement with you with Unmasked, Ace Frehley carried this album as well. Those songs stood out much better than the rest of the songs. Although, Charisma, X-Ray Eyes, they were still good songs. That's my opinion on that. So that's my number 14. So we're up to 13. We did Unmasked for Chris, 13 for Sklo. What do you got?
13 for me is finally your guys' favorite album, Hot in the Shade. It's 13 for me.
Absolutely.
And this is the reason why I have this. Obviously, you guys had this a little bit lower. Obviously, it was your last, Chris and Dean. It was 19, so it wasn't like your bottom. But for me, like a big part of this is this is basically Eric Carr's last album with the band. And that kind of brings I'm a huge Eric Carr fan, and I love Little Caesar. And I think that was great that they he brought it to the table and they had him record it and play it on the album. I love that song. And I don't know, you guys might think it's cheesy, but I really do like the song Hide Your Heart a lot. I don't know, it's so cheesy, but it's something about it I just like. The do ha ha ha. It's something about it. I really do like it a lot. It's probably my favorite song on the album, to be honest. And I obviously like Little Caesar as well. And you're right, there's a lot of songs on it. It's almost an hour long. And I think for me, it's more a nostalgic thing. It's something I was looking forward to when it came out in '89. And I wanted all those songs at the time. I wanted some Kiss music. Because at that time, I think what was the most recent album before that was 2 years. It was Crazy Nights right before that. But it's the last one with Eric on the fully on a full album with them. So, but yeah, that's the reason why. And then honestly, I was surprised, to be honest, when I ranked it, because when I was listening to the albums the last couple of weeks and I put it on there, I'm like, man, I put this higher than I thought I was going to put it, to be honest, because I didn't expect to put it that high. But I did like it, and I dug it, and and actually it's so funny that I put it that high that I actually listened to it again today just to see if I was going to keep it where it was, because it was the one album that I was like, man, I have that higher than I thought I would have it. So I listened to it again today, and I'm like, man, I do. I'm fine where I have it. So yeah, so that's Hot in the Shade.
I did a bit of that myself, where like I really tested albums against each other too. Like I would put them in a certain placement, and I go, "Is this really better than this one?" And then I would go back and listen to both of them again, and go, "Okay, well maybe my order is a little different." So I really put a lot of work into this. Like I gave every one of these albums probably at least 2 listens, except for maybe the worst of the worst. Like I didn't make a lot of effort to listen to those again, but
Yeah, definitely.
I totally understand where you're coming from with it. Like I said, there's three to me standout songs, 4 if you include Little Caesar. And side notes, Michael Bolton was a co-writer on Forever, so that's a cool thing.
Yeah, it's cool.
And then Tommy Thayer, obviously, is his name is popping up. He's been associated with the Kiss organization for quite a long time.
Yep.
Co-wrote Betrayed, and Rise to It, co-written by Bob Halligan Jr., who is from Judas Priest fame, the songwriter to Some Heads Are Gonna Roll, and I think it's Take These Chains Off. I think he wrote that song.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
So Rise to It's a cool song. I mean, when this album came out, I was so excited because I liked Rise to It. I liked Hide Your Heart. I saw the video on MTV. It was just, it, and then Forever, of course, like I said, I used it, on my ex, but I mean, there was so much extra shit. I'm like, it was so tiring to try and have to get through it all that it burned me out. So I get it.
Yep. All right. So what's your 13 for you?
My number 13 I actually was redoing my list while while we were talking because I'm like, hey, wait a second.
Yeah.
Number 13 for me is Animalize. So Animalize, when I think about all these next bunch of albums that are coming up, um, Animalize is one of these things. If you start listening to all the tracks and you say, okay, it's got Heaven's on Fire. That's a good song. I've Had Enough. Good intro to the album. I mean, that's killer the way it starts out. It's a banger, you know, and then it becomes, Gene Simmons, Burn Bitch Burn. Lonely as the Hunter is not that great of a song to me. Under the Gun is pretty cool. They even played it live on that Kiss Animalized video that they put out in '85. Um, Thrills in the Night. It was they tried to make it a single. It just really didn't do much. Murder in High Heels. I don't like that song much. So it kind of just kept getting weaker and weaker, and then they would try to throw a cool riff in there with like Under the Gun, but it didn't do it for me. So that's why it's my number 13.
Okay.
Real quick, just want to touch on this, and I noticed I think we all have 12 left, right? And out of the 12 left, we haven't mentioned 8 albums yet. So I think that's pretty impressive that we have 8 albums in our top 12 that all of us haven't even mentioned yet. I was just kind of going to quick math, I think is what it is. Just thought that was interesting.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that means we have a lot of very similar, maybe obviously the order might be different, but we haven't mentioned out of the 12, that's pretty good. So,
Pretty cool.
yeah, pretty cool.
Well, that's where we're going to bring things to a close for part 1 of Kiss Worst to First. Remember, you can listen to all of our episodes whenever or wherever you like by clicking like or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform.
And don't forget to interact with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or send us an email to debatingmetal@gmail.com. If you listen to us on YouTube, be sure to leave us a comment and ring that bell to be notified when we post a new episode. And remember to tune in to our next episode for part 2 of Kiss Worst to First. On behalf of Kenneth, Sklo, and myself, stay safe and always turn it up to 11.
See ya.